Hello, my friends. My name is Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to help you understand context in the war in Ukraine. Now, I don't speak hyperbolically when I say what I say here, that Zelensky just destroyed Putin's rationale for the invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And when I say that, I'm not, this isn't clickbait. I'm not trying to make something up. Just follow my argument here. And I talked about this yesterday in my three big stories segment. I do this every night, just 3 minutes to cover three stories. But because it was only 1 minute, I thought I had to expand this. So here we go. We're going to start here with the ISW just 2 or 3 days ago, talking about how President Putin falsely claimed that Russia supports the unconditional equality and sovereignty of all states in this letter to the non-aligned movement summit. Now, he then defined the Ruski mirror, and that's what's really important here. He said the Kremlin rejects Ukrainian statehood and nationhood by incorporating Ukraine into the ideology and geographic conception of the Russian world. That's the Ruski mirror. Now, what is the Ruski mirror? Well, he defined it, which includes any Russian speakers and carriers of Russian history and culture, as well as compatriots, and includes all the former territories of Kievan Rus, the Kingdom of Muscovy, the Russian Empire, and the Soviet Union. Whoa, wait a minute. So if you're in Poland, if you're in Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, Romania, Belarus, Bulgaria, any place, East Germany, any place where the former Soviet Union, maybe even Warsaw Pact was, any place where Russians were is part of the Russian world. And he's there to protect them, which is a great thing in his mind. But it's a very bad thing for the rest of the world. Okay, so I'm talking to Constantine the other day, and we stumbled over this concept where I said, okay, it seems to me like Russia is re-Sovietizing, like they're becoming more authoritarian, but it's not in a Marxist-Leninist kind of way. I want you to listen to just 1 minute of this. Russia is re-Sovietizing in authoritarianism, but not in Marxism. Like they're doing some of the same heavy-handed tactics from the Soviet era, but it's not for the sake of Leninist, Marxist kind of values. It wasn't about that. It's just about supporting Putin, about supporting the regime, about right and like the laws, the heavy-handed protests about protesting, or can't say anything about the special military operation, or those kinds of things. It's becoming more like that. Is that your perception, or is that not fair?
You are absolutely correct. Lenin and Marx are not. You're the first time you mentioning them is the first time I actually am hearing. Reminds me of good old days, Certainly, no Marx or Lenin has been said, but the idea is the same. Only Marx and Lenin were replaced by the Russian world.
Okay, right, hear that? Replaced by the Russian world, the Ruski mirror. So if Putin can go anywhere that the Ruski mirror is, as defined by wherever Russians are, wherever Russian speakers are, that's really kind of his property, and he needs to go and claim it. This is very much the argument that Hitler made in 1939. And if you think I'm making it up, just Google what pretext did Hitler use to invade Poland. On September 1st, 1939, Germany invaded Poland. To justify the action, Nazi propagandists accused Poland of persecuting ethnic Germans living in Poland. That's what happened. And Putin's using Hitler's playbook. Now, here's the Kyiv Post. Here's Zelensky demolishing the argument that Putin's been using. Zelensky publishes a decree on historically Ukrainian regions. Russia is furious. Well, what did he say? Zelensky on Monday angered Moscow by accusing it of oppressing Ukrainians living in parts of Russia historically inhabited by Ukrainians. Remember, the Kievan Rus came before Moscow, or the Muscovite Empire. The law, entitled On the Territories of the Russian Federation, historically inhabited by Ukrainians, named 6 modern-day Russian regions of western and southern Russia that Zelensky said had been historically home to ethnic Ukrainians. They were Belgorod, Bryansk, Krasnodar, Kursk, Rostov, and Voronezh. And for centuries, Russia has systematically committed and continues to commit actions aimed at destroying national identity, oppressing Ukrainians, and violating their rights and freedoms, the decree said. He said that ethnic Ukrainians should be allowed to be educated in Ukrainian language, have access to Ukrainian media, and enjoy freedom of assembly and religion. And if you follow what Russia's been doing, they should invade Russia and take those lands to protect those historically Ukrainian lands. Okay, now with that, this is what a map of that would look like. These are the areas that Zelensky mentioned, and that's an interesting case. Okay, now let's look at them. These are the 4 oblasts that Russia has seized, claiming that it's now part of Russia. Now, there's something interesting to this. It's not just because these were areas that were historically more Russian, but now couple that with the argument that they also need a buffer zone between them and the West. So that's one argument we just talked about. Here's the next argument. If Russia really was looking for a buffer zone rather than expansionism, they would have grabbed these 4 territories and called it a buffer zone, chased everybody out, and said, this is a buffer zone between us and you, the West. But that's not what they did, because in their minds, this is what the map should actually look like. Medvedev put this out some time ago, and Russia should take pretty much all of Ukraine except for maybe a little bit around Kyiv. So if you follow their logic, though, with the buffer zone, instead of just these 4 regions, including Crimea as a 5th, they should have to take a buffer zone of Kharkiv and Dnipropetrovsk and Mykolaiv and maybe even Sumy, just to make sure that they have a buffer zone between themselves and the West. But if I look at this map now, I think that based on Zelensky's argument, these are actually regions that should be returned, and then maybe there should even be a buffer zone around here. And that's really interesting to think about, because what we heard is that Ukrainians need to make peace and give away these zones in order to make peace. Well, maybe it should be something different. Maybe the Russians should have to give away these zones in order to make peace. I mean, actually, the Russians invaded Ukraine. They're the aggressors. They've done the damage. That just seems to make more sense. So there's a principle in judo that if whatever you do to your opponent can pretty much do to you. And Putin should understand this because he's a judoka. He's been in judo for many, many years. And this is what Zelensky is actually doing. Now, I want to remind you that if you take this principle that we just talked about and you apply it, and let other countries do the same thing. This is what the Japanese Empire looked like in 1942. This is the height of the Chinese Empire. And this is what the Mongolian Empire looked like at one point. And I'm pretty sure that the Russians don't want to apply the principles of the Ruski Mir to the Mongols. I want to leave you with one last thing just because it's fun. Because it's almost a metaphor. Here's a little girl who's about to toss Putin with a judo throw. Got that? See, it's like a metaphor of what Zelensky just did with Putin's philosophy. Hey, thank you for your time. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes, and thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.